Story 1. I don't know if it was the heat, the endless buzzing of the jungle, or just how far we were from anything remotely familiar, but something about that place got under my skin fast. I'd only been in the Amazon for a week, part of a reforestation volunteer program that sounded noble on paper and nightmarish in execution. There were 12 of us, mostly students and activists, living in canvas tents along a narrow riverbank. It wasn't glamorous, but I wasn't expecting what I did find: a barefoot boy, maybe 6 or 7 years old, who stared at us from the trees. I only saw him once the first day, just a pale shape in the shadows. But something about the way he looked at me, it wasn't curious, it was intentional. I told Anna, one of the team leaders, about the kid. She just laughed and said, "You'll see a lot of weird things out here. Your brain's not used to the jungle." But it wasn't just visual. The moment I noticed him, I swear the air shifted, like it got heavier, thicker. I remember the smell too. Sweet, like overripe fruit mixed with something sour, something wrong. The kid didn't move, didn't blink. And when I finally tore my eyes away, heart racing, and ran to where he'd been standing, there were footprints, tiny, bare, and deep in the mud. But they didn't lead anywhere, just ended, mid-step, like he'd vanished into thin air. After that, I started noticing him more often, always at the edge of the tree line, always watching, never moving, never closer. Once, I caught a glimpse of him between the massive roots of a kapok tree just before sunset. His skin looked almost gray in the fading light, and his limbs too thin, like he hadn't eaten in weeks. I asked the others if they'd seen anything, even just movement in the brush, but every single one of them looked at me like I was being dramatic. "It's probably a monkey," someone said. "You sure you're staying hydrated?" another joked. But it wasn't a monkey. I knew what I saw. And the strangest part was that the ground around the trees remained undisturbed. No broken twigs, no bent leaves, like he was weightless. That night, I barely slept. The jungle sounds that had been kind of comforting, frogs, cicadas, the occasional splash of a fish, felt oppressive now. Every rustle outside the tent made me jump. At one point, I could swear I heard something soft brushing against the canvas near my feet. I held my breath and listened. No footsteps, just that same slow drag, like skin on fabric. When I finally got the courage to unzip the flap and peek outside with my flashlight, there was nothing there, except a single, wet footprint in the dirt. Small, bare, pointed toward the tent. The footprint was gone by morning. Rain had come sometime during the night, wiping everything clean. Or maybe it never existed at all. I tried to tell myself that. Maybe I dreamed it. Maybe I was just letting the isolation get to me. But when I stepped outside, I noticed something even stranger. My boots had been moved. Not far, just a few inches to the left of where I'd left them. Toes pointed slightly inward, like someone had tried them on and left them neatly. No one else mentioned anything unusual. They were already gathered for breakfast, chatting like it was just another day. I sat there with my stale protein bar and kept glancing toward the trees. Later that afternoon, we hiked to a clearing about a mile from camp to plant seedlings. I stayed near the back of the group, partly because I was exhausted, partly because I couldn't stop scanning the foliage. Every branch looked like an arm. Every shadow seemed to twitch when I wasn't looking directly at it. At one point, I dropped to my knees to adjust a sapling, and there, across the field, just beyond the green curtain of vines, I saw him again. Same dirty face, same hollow stare. But this time, he smiled. Just barely. The corners of his mouth tugged upward like he was mimicking an expression he didn't fully understand. I froze. I must have stayed crouched there for at least a minute, staring back at him, heart pounding in my ears. Then I blinked, and he was gone. No footsteps, no rustling leaves, just empty vines swaying gently, like they'd never been touched. I wanted to scream, but my throat was dry and my chest felt too tight. When I finally stood up, I noticed something that chilled me more than the boy himself. One of the freshly planted saplings had been pulled out of the ground. The hole was still there, the roots exposed and damp, like someone had done it seconds ago. I looked around for a tool, a glove, any sign someone else had been there, but the others were. That soft brushing against the canvas, but slower this time, more deliberate. It circled the tent. Once, twice, then it stopped at the entrance. I stared at the zipper, waiting, barely breathing. And then I saw it, a shadow, small, child-sized, standing perfectly still, not moving, not even when I whispered, "Who's there?" into the dark. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, flashlight pointed at the entrance, muscles cramped and trembling. By morning, the shadow was gone, like it had melted into the jungle. I almost convinced myself it was some animal, maybe a wild pig or a trick of the moonlight. But when I unzipped the flap and stepped outside, I saw them. 3 small footprints in the mud, leading out of my tent, not to it, out. I hadn't unzipped the flap all night. I hadn't moved. I hadn't heard anything come in. I stood there, shaking, staring at those perfect, barefoot impressions, until Anna came over and asked why I looked like I'd seen a ghost. That was the day I stopped talking to anyone. I didn't trust them. Or maybe I didn't trust myself. I kept thinking, what if I did open the flap and just don't remember? What if something got inside me, or through me, or used me somehow? I started keeping notes, sketching what I saw, writing times, smells, sounds, desperate to hold on to something real. And then, on our final night before heading back upriver, I went into the brush to pee. Just a few steps off the trail, not far. And when I turned around, I couldn't find the trail again. Everything looked wrong. Trees I didn't recognize, vines too thick, shadows that didn't line up with the fading light. And in the silence that followed, I heard a whisper, soft and high-pitched, just behind my ear. "You found me." I spun around, but no one was there. Just trees, just that choking smell again, sweet and rotting, like fruit left in the sun too long. I stumbled backward, heart hammering, vision swimming with panic. Then I saw him. Not across the field, not behind the trees, but right in front of me, inches away. His eyes were completely black now. No whites, no irises, just void. His mouth opened like he was going to scream, but no sound came out, only silence, a dead silence, where even the jungle stopped breathing. I don't remember running. I don't even remember getting back to camp. I just woke up inside my tent, face scratched, clothes damp, and mud on my arms like I'd been crawling. We left the next morning. I didn't say goodbye to anyone. I didn't sleep during the boat ride. When I got back to the city, I tried to forget. I deleted the photos, burned the sketches. But last week, I found something under my bed. A small, muddy footprint on the wooden floor. I live alone, 5th floor apartment, no kids. I haven't slept since. I keep the lights on. I don't go near the window at night. But sometimes, just sometimes, I hear it again. That soft brushing sound circling the walls. If anyone's ever seen him too, the barefoot boy in the trees, please say something. I need to know I'm the only one. Story 2. I've always been the kind of guy who rolls his eyes at ghost stories. You know the type, the annoying skeptic in horror movies who mocks everything right before getting dragged into the woods. That was me last month in British Columbia, cracking jokes by the campfire while our guide gave us a serious warning. If you hear a voice calling your name in the dark, don't answer it. I snorted into my beer. Yeah, okay, creepy forest demons calling me for tea. Got it, man. We were deep in the Yoho backcountry, 5 of us on a guided camping trip. Me, my girlfriend Maddie, her cousin Rachel, and 2 friends from her college days. Everyone else seemed at least half spooked by the guide's little campfire story, but I kept pushing buttons. I even whispered Maddie's name behind her tent that night just to mess with her. Juvenile, I know, but I wasn't exactly expecting anything real to happen. I mean, my mom used to say I'd get cursed for making fun of things like that. Funny thing is, she's been dead for 2 years. The first 2 nights were uneventful, just cold air, crickets, and the occasional sound of branches snapping in the distance. The forest was dense but beautiful, and even I had to admit there was something oddly calming about being so far from everything. Still, not a distant echo, not a trick of the wind. It was close. Evan. Soft, familiar, and unmistakably my mother's voice. I froze. Not just because of the voice, but because I recognized the exact tone she used. That gentle lilt, like when she used to wake me up for school. For a few seconds, I just stood there, staring into the trees, my brain glitching. My mother had been dead for 2 years. Cancer. I held her hand when she stopped breathing. I gave the eulogy. I watched her get lowered into the ground. And yet, here I was, in the middle of the Canadian wilderness, listening to her call my name like nothing had changed. I tried to laugh it off. "Nice one, guys," I said, louder than I needed to. "Real funny." I even walked a few steps toward the voice, half expecting to see Rachel crouched behind a bush with a voice memo playing from her phone. Nothing. Just trees. And then it came again, closer this time. "Evan, come here." Still her voice, still soft. But something about the way she said it made my stomach twist. Like the cadence was just slightly off, too slow. Like someone trying to sound like my mother. I backed away slowly, heart thudding now, suddenly aware of how far I'd wandered from camp. The trees all looked the same, and for a moment I couldn't remember which direction I'd come from. That's when I saw movement. Not a full figure, just the outline of something between the trunks. A silhouette, maybe 10 or 15 feet ahead, too still to be natural. I squinted, and I swear to God I saw the hem of a nightgown. My mom's old nightgown, the blue one with faded flowers. The one she used to wear when she tucked me in. A cold wave rolled through me. I turned and walked fast, not quite running, not yet, trying to retrace my steps. But the forest had changed. Every turn looked unfamiliar, and I couldn't find the narrow path I thought I'd used to get here. Then I heard it again. "Evan, please." Closer. Not more than a few steps behind me. I spun around. Nothing. Just black trees, and silence so loud it made my ears ring. That's when I started running. Branches clawed at my arms as I stumbled through the underbrush, too panicked to care about the noise I was making. I didn't dare call out for Maddie. I didn't want that thing knowing where the others were. I just wanted to get back to camp, to people, to firelight. But the deeper I went, the more the forest seemed to bend around me. The trees closed in tighter. The ground sloped downward when it shouldn't have. And then I saw something that made me stop cold. My flashlight, lying on the ground exactly where I'd been standing when I first heard her voice. I'd been running in circles. And then, laughter. Quiet at first, almost playful, then rising into something sharp and wet, like a cough mixed with a scream. It echoed in a way real laughter shouldn't, like it bounced off trees that weren't there a second ago. I pressed my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut. It's not real. It's not real. But the moment I opened them, She was there. Or it was. Just a few feet ahead, standing between two trees. Pale, too tall, wearing that same nightgown. The face wasn't hers. It was stretched, off-center, like a mask melting in the heat. And it smiled like it knew me. I don't remember how I got back. One minute, I was staring into that thing's warped face, and the next, Maddie was shaking me awake outside the tent. Apparently, I'd been gone for nearly 2 hours. My arms were scratched to hell, my shirt was torn, and I had mud caked into my shoes. But I had no memory of the return trip. I tried to explain what happened, or at least what I thought happened, but the look Maddie gave me said she didn't believe a word of it. Neither did the guide. He just looked at me for a long time and said, "You answered it, didn't you?" We cut the trip short. No one argued. On the way back to civilization, the trees looked the same, but I felt watched the entire time. Every time the wind rustled the branches, I flinched. I haven't slept properly since that night. Sometimes, when it's quiet, I still hear.
Not during the hike. No, I never heard anything while we were out there. It was only back home, scrubbing through footage on my laptop, that I caught it. A whisper. Low, clipped, almost mechanical. At first, I thought it was some kind of glitch, maybe water damage or wind. But when I isolated the channel, cleaned the file, and slowed it down, I realized it was a voice. And it was speaking Portuguese, whispering coordinates over and over again. I didn't want to look up the coordinates. I really didn't. Part of me still thinks I shouldn't have. But something about the way the voice said it, not pleading, not angry, just insistent, made it feel like a command more than a suggestion. The numbers repeated 3 times, then silence. When I finally gave in and typed them into Google Earth, my stomach tightened. The location wasn't far from where we'd camped on the 4th night. Deep jungle, no roads, no trails, just a clearing marked by nothing. I told myself it was probably an old survey site or something local guides had used years ago, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd missed something back there, that maybe we walked right past it. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I went back to the footage from that specific day, frame by frame. Around the timestamp where the audio started, I noticed a strange flicker in the background, something behind the trees. It wasn't clear, could have been light or motion blur. But then it happened again, 3 frames later, same spot. A shape standing just beyond the tree line, not moving, not following, just watching. I tried asking one of the local guides about it. I didn't mention the voice or the coordinates, just said I thought I saw something strange in the footage near where we camped. His reaction was immediate. He stopped chewing, set down his drink, and asked me to repeat the coordinates. I hadn't even told him I had coordinates. When I did, his expression shifted from curious to pale, like he'd suddenly remembered something he wished he hadn't. "You didn't go there, right?" he asked. I told him no. He nodded slowly, but didn't say anything else. I didn't press. I should have. By the next morning, he was gone. Just left. No note, no explanation. I reached out to the company that had contracted him, and they told me he'd declined all future expeditions. When I checked his social media, everything had been wiped clean. Photos, contacts, even his WhatsApp went dead. That should have been my cue to stop. I kept telling myself this wasn't like last time, that this was just a strange coincidence, maybe something cultural I didn't understand. But part of me already knew. I'd seen that same kind of fear before, back in 2018. Different jungle, different coordinates, same silence. I couldn't leave it alone. A week later, I flew back, alone. Told my partner it was for follow-up shots, some B-roll I missed. I didn't mention the voice, or the coordinates, or the thing behind the trees. I hired a boat and retraced part of our route, using the GPS to get as close to the site as I could. There was no path, no markers. I had to machete through thick undergrowth, every step sounding too loud in the dead humidity. Around midday, I reached the clearing. It wasn't empty. Someone or something had been there. The trees around the space were stripped of bark, some of them scorched black near the base. There were bones, not scattered like animals had gotten to them, but arranged carefully. 4 lines, all pointing inward like a compass. In the center, the ground had been dug out, not recently, but not long ago either. The soil was dark, sunken. I wanted to believe it was a ritual site, something indigenous I didn't understand. But the bones, they were human. I saw a jaw with teeth, a child's shoe. My knees nearly gave out. I don't remember leaving the clearing. That part's a blur. Patches of green, sounds like insects, but deeper, lower. By the time I came to, I was back at the riverbank, hours gone. My camera was still recording, but the footage from the clearing was corrupted. Only the audio remained. And in it, beneath the static, I could hear breathing, not mine, slow, ragged, and close, like someone was crouched just behind me the entire time. The coordinates whispered again, but this time they were different. New numbers, a different location, another site. When I got back to the city, I brought the audio to a forensic tech I knew from a previous documentary job. I didn't tell her what it was, just asked if she could clean it up. An hour later, she called me, whispering over the phone like she was afraid someone might hear. "There's a second voice," she said. "It's layered under the coordinates, saying the same thing, just a split second later." She sent me the clean.
I haven't shared the coordinates. I don't think it matters anymore. Last night, I woke up to my GoPro powering on by itself, just a soft click in the dark. It started recording without prompting. I pulled the battery, left it on the table, and tried to sleep again. But when I checked this morning, there was a new file, 3 seconds long, black screen. My voice, or something using it, whispering the same numbers again, the new coordinates. It's like it's waiting for me to go. I haven't told anyone where I'm headed next. I booked a flight to Manas for tomorrow, one way. I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe part of me needs to understand, or maybe I already know and just can't admit it. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Because if these things can learn your voice, maybe they can learn everything else too. Story 4. I've spent years trying to convince myself that what happened in Guatemala was just a glitch, a technical hiccup, a misremembered sequence, a fever dream. I deleted everything, swore I'd never take another remote job again. But when the offer to film a cultural documentary in a secluded Amazonian village came through, the money was too good. And I told myself this time would be different, controlled, professional, safe. The village was a 2-day boat ride upriver, cut off from modern infrastructure, with no cell reception and only a cranky satellite rig for intermittent comms. The locals were welcoming but private, always watching from doorways or behind woven curtains. The air felt heavy, not just humid, but thick, like it pushed back when you moved through it. The first few days, we filmed everything. Dances, food rituals, the carved totems that lined the edge of the jungle like sentries. Every night, we'd back up the footage to our drives and double-check the shots. Until night 4, when we opened the files and found something else. At first, we thought it was a prank. The main folder was still named correctly, but inside were 6 clips we'd never recorded, each from a different angle in our sleeping quarters. The footage was crisp, high resolution, with no signs of tampering. In the first clip, I was asleep in my hammock, breathing slowly, one hand over my chest. But the angle was wrong. It was filmed from above, almost like a ceiling-mounted camera, except we hadn't set up anything like that. The others had similar clips. Elias curled up under his mosquito net, Danny murmuring in her sleep, and Raul staring straight at the camera for 8 full seconds before suddenly lying down, as if nothing happened. We confronted him the next morning, half joking, trying to diffuse the tension. But Raoul swore he didn't remember anything, not the camera, not waking up. He looked shaken, pale, eyes darting like he was expecting something to be behind him. Danny got pissed and demanded we wipe the footage. I agreed, even though something in me, something I'd buried for years, whispered not to. That feeling I hadn't had since Guatemala, like the air around the tent was listening, waiting. That night, we triple-checked the gear. Elias set up a GoPro pointed at the door of our tent, just to feel like we were in control of something. We even took turns staying up in shifts. I volunteered for the 2 a.m. slot, not because I wasn't tired, but because I needed to see it for myself. The jungle was alive with sound. Insects, distant howls, leaves rustling in rhythmic bursts. I kept glancing at the camera we'd set up, red light blinking, still recording. But sometime between 2:35 and 2:50, I must have blinked, just blinked, and suddenly the tent was quiet. Too quiet. Elias was out cold. I checked the footage right then and there. The GoPro had stopped recording at 2:39 a.m. The file just cut off mid-frame. No corruption, no power failure, just gone. But there was a new folder on my drive, time-stamped 2:41 a.m. Inside, 5 new clips. Once again, we were all asleep. But this time, I wasn't in the frame. The shot was from my perspective, as if I was holding the camera, walking slowly past each of their sleeping bodies. In one of the clips, I heard my own voice whisper something in a language I didn't understand. Just one word, repeated twice. I swear I've heard that word before, years ago. In that jungle temple in Guatemala, the one we weren't supposed to enter. The others noticed I was different that morning, but the village elders came to our tent just after dusk. They said nothing, just stared. One of them reached out and wiped something invisible from my cheek. Then they turned and left. That night, we didn't sleep. We didn't even pretend to. We huddled in a circle with the lights on, all gear powered down, no cameras, no recordings. But sometime around 3 a.m., there was a flicker. Not in the lights, but in us, like a skipped heartbeat. Donnie gasped and pointed at Raoul. He was holding his phone up, filming us, but his eyes were closed. He was sleepwalking, recording. His mouth moved slowly, lips forming that same word. I rushed him, grabbed the phone, shook him awake. He collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. When I opened the video, it showed the 4 of us sleeping, from a 5th angle none of us could place. We left at first light. No goodbyes, no repacking, just grabbed the essentials and got on the boat. The river was strangely calm, almost stagnant, like it didn't want to let us go. No one spoke for the first 2 hours. Every so often, I'd glance at Raoul. He hadn't said a word since the night before, but I saw him mouthing something silently over and over. When I leaned in, I heard it again, that damn word. I snatched his bag, dug through his gear, and found a second phone, hidden, powered off. I turned it on. The gallery was full of videos, dozens, all of us, sleeping, from angles that didn't make sense. Some were filmed from outside the tent, some from beneath the floorboards. One clip, the worst, showed me staring into the lens, unmoving, while everyone else slept. The timestamp was from 2 nights before, but I have no memory of it, none. We deleted what we could and threw the phone into the river. It sank instantly, no ripple, no trace. Raoul didn't even protest. When we reached the port town, Donnie laughed without a word. Elias quit filmmaking. And me? I tried to bury it again, like Guatemala, like before. But the pattern is the same. The silence, the footage, the word. I moved back to the city, took a desk job. No cameras, no travel, nothing that could draw it back.
But last week, I woke up to a new file on my laptop. I hadn't used it in days. It was just sitting there on the desktop, labeled with the date, the exact time I had that dream about the jungle again. I opened it. It was a video of me sleeping. Same position as always, same breath pattern, same angle I never set up. But this time, at the end of the clip, something enters the frame. Just a shape. Pale, tall, watching me for 7 seconds before vanishing off screen. I've wiped the file, smashed the laptop, taped over every camera in my apartment. But every night since, I hear it again. That word, faint, coming from the hallway. I don't know what it means. I don't want to know. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 5. I've done over a dozen river surveys in my career, and trust me, the weirdest thing I ever found before last month was a snapping turtle wearing a baby shoe like a helmet. So yeah, I wasn't exactly prepared for a goddamn floating house in the middle of a nowhere channel in southern Louisiana. We were supposed to be documenting sediment buildup for some climate change model. Instead, we found a house drifting half-sunk and silent, tethered to nothing, just waiting. At first, I joked that it looked like something from a haunted house ride, one of those cheap ones with rubber bats and fake fog. The thing had moss climbing up the walls, a busted door swinging with the current, and a porch covered in bird shit. Matt, our lead cartographer, laughed it off and said it was probably just some hunter's shack that got swept downriver. But when we climbed aboard, everything changed. The air inside was wrong, still, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. And then we saw the calendar. The date circled in red, April 9th, the exact day we arrived. I should have left then. I mean, the rational part of me, the part that doesn't believe in ghosts or fate or whatever, was already screaming. But curiosity's a hell of a drug, especially when you're trying to one-up your coworkers. So instead of leaving, I made some dumb comment like, guess someone forgot to buy a new calendar. That's when Lena, our equipment tech, called us over. She was in the back room, holding something in her hands with this look on her face, like she was about to be sick. It was a photo. Actually, a whole damn wall full of them. Dozens of printed pictures tacked up like some kind of
Closely. Matt tried to rationalize it, of course. Of course. He said maybe someone had lived there recently and spotted us while passing by, snapped a few photos from afar. Maybe they were squatters. Creepy squatters with a high-quality zoom lens and a habit of documenting strangers like a serial killer planning a scrapbook. Lena wasn't buying it. Neither was I. The timestamps on some of the photos were from 2 nights ago. We hadn't seen a soul for miles and days. There was only dense forest, black water, and silence. We searched the rest of the place. The kitchen still had cans of food, stacked neatly, labels facing out. Dust coated everything, thick, undisturbed. No sign that anyone had cooked or even breathed in there recently. Except the back bedroom. The bed was made perfectly, but the pillow had an indent, a deep one, like someone had just gotten up. Dev found a spiral notebook under the mattress. Most of it was nonsense, scribbles, scratched out pages, numbers. But on the last page, written in bold red marker, were the words, "They're back." Lena wanted to leave immediately. Honestly, so did I. But Matt insisted we document everything first. Said it could be some bizarre prank or even an art installation. You don't just stumble on shit like this and walk away, he said. Right, because nothing screams modern art like a floating cabin filled with stalker photos and apocalypse scribbles. Still, we took pictures, logged GPS coordinates, even bagged a few items. I stayed outside most of the time after that. The house felt aware somehow, like every creak of the wood was watching me. It wasn't until we were back on the boat that we realized the worst part. Lena was flipping through the calendar again, slower this time.
There were markings, tiny ones, next to several dates. At first glance, they looked random, but then she noticed it. Each date matched the day a previous river team had gone missing in this region over the past 5 years. Disappearances we had joked about at camp. Stories locals told to scare researchers. Urban legends. Except now, those dates were real, logged, counted. And today, our arrival was the last one circled. We started the engine immediately. No more discussion, no more theories, just get the hell out. Matt kept glancing back at the house as it faded behind the trees, like he expected it to follow us. I remember gripping the side rail, white-knuckled, trying not to panic. But it wasn't until we were halfway down the channel that Dev something that froze me. "Why were there only 4 beds?" he asked quietly. It hit me like a punch. He was right. There were only 4, but 5 of us had come on this trip. 5. That night, we anchored miles away, close to a ranger station. We should have felt safe, but none of us slept. Every sound, branches cracking, water lapping, the engine settling, felt like a signal. Lena sat up all night with her knife out. Matt barely spoke. And Dev? Dev wouldn't stop staring at the trees. Just before dawn, he asked if we'd seen the guy in the yellow jacket. Said he saw someone watching us from the bank. The thing is, none of us owned a yellow jacket. And we all remembered something else. In the photo wall, one of them had 5 people. We reported everything when we got back. The house, the photos, the calendar. The officials humored us, took our statements, but you could see it in their eyes. They didn't believe a word. When we showed them the GPS coordinates, they sent a team out. A week later, they said they found nothing. No house, no debris, just empty water. Like it had never been there. But I know what we saw, what we touched. That bed was still warm. Those photos were real. And someone, something, knew we were coming. We've all gone our separate ways since. Lena quit fieldwork. Matt started drinking. Dev, we haven't heard from him in weeks. His phone's off, social's inactive. He's just gone. And me? I still check that calendar photo every night, because there's something I didn't tell the others. Below the circled date, April 9th, there was a faint smudge, like something had been erased. I ran a filter on the photo, enhanced it, and I swear to you, there was another date beneath it. Tomorrow's. If anyone's ever found something like that house, please tell me. I need to know what's coming. Story 6. I told myself, not on any map I'd ever seen, and I'd studied plenty before the trip. But it looked old, like something out of a forgotten postcard. Whitewashed cabins, stone chimneys, smoke curling lazily into the air. No cars, no wires. I should have been relieved. I wasn't. Something in my gut twisted. But I forced myself down the slope anyway. People were already walking out to greet me, smiling, waving, too friendly. And the first thing the woman closest to me said was, "You finally made it, Eli." I never told her my name. I froze. It wasn't just the name. It was the way she said it, like she'd known me for years, like I was late to something important. I wanted to ask how she knew me, but the words stuck in my throat. Others gathered behind her, all different ages, but with the same calm, pleasant expressions. One man clapped me on the back like an old friend returning home. Another handed me a canteen before I could protest. "Long journey," he said, smiling. His teeth were too white, too straight, perfect, like they'd been molded. I accepted the water, half expecting it to taste like metal or dirt. It didn't. It was cold, pure. Somehow, that scared me more. They led me through the village, chatting like I was part of some inside joke. The houses looked hand-built but pristine. No wear, no rot. Everything was too intact, as if it had been frozen in time. There were no phones, no TVs, but someone was baking bread and a soft hum of music played from somewhere, scratchy like an old radio. A little girl tugged at my sleeve and asked if I still played the guitar. I hadn't picked one up in a decade. She smiled when I didn't answer and ran off, humming a song I swear I used to play in high school. I started to sweat despite the cool mountain air. My thoughts were slipping fast. I needed to leave. But when I turned around, the path I'd come from was gone. Trees, just trees. I told them I needed to keep moving, that people would be looking for me. They just smiled, like I'd said something silly. "There's no rush," one of them said. "You're safe now." That word, safe, echoed in my skull like a warning. I've heard it used like that before. After the incident, years ago, the therapist said it to me over and over. "You're safe now." But this was different. Here it sounded final, like a door being quietly shut behind me. They offered me a room in one of the cabins. I said no. They insisted. I gave in. Inside, everything was spotless. Handmade quilts, wooden furniture polished smooth, even a book sitting open on the nightstand. I didn't recognize the title. When I flipped to the front, there was no author, just my name, in neat black ink. Elijah Merrick. The same name I'd spent years trying to distance myself from after everything that happened in Oregon. I slammed the book shut, but the room didn't seem to react. No creaks, no groans, just a gentle breeze through the window, carrying the faint smell of lavender and something else I couldn't place. Something wrong, like soil after rain, but sweet. I lay on the bed, fully clothed, heart pounding. I didn't sleep, I just listened. And around 3 a.m., I heard footsteps outside. Slow, deliberate, crunching the gravel in steady intervals, back and forth, back and forth. Then, silence. In the morning, they acted like nothing had happened. Someone brought me a basket of fresh bread and jam and asked if I'd slept well. I lied, said it was the best sleep I'd had in years. I didn't know what else to do. They were watching me, not obviously, but constantly. Every time I turned a corner, someone was there, smiling, asking oddly specific questions. One man asked if my shoulders still hurt when it rained. Another offered me tea and mentioned my mother by name, her maiden name. I nearly dropped the cup. I hadn't spoken that name out loud in over a decade. I was shaking now, but trying to stay calm. I thought about running. I thought about screaming. But part of me was terrified they'd stop smiling if I did. So I played along, ate their food, answered their questions with vague half-lies, wandered around the village looking for any clue, a radio, a phone, a road, anything to prove this place was real. But there were no wires, no fences, no tools out of place. Even the animals seemed off, too clean, too quiet. A dog trotted by me at one point and stared up at me without blinking. I swear it's
Another was from last winter. I was walking to work, headphones in, expression blank. That one nearly made me vomit. Someone had been watching me, for years maybe. I backed out of the chapel, nearly tripping over a loose floorboard. When I turned to run, the same woman who greeted me at the start was standing in the doorway. She didn't speak, just looked at me with the saddest smile I've ever seen, like she pitied me. I demanded answers, asked who they were, what this place was. She didn't flinch. "You've been here before, Eli, not in body, but part of you's always belonged here." That phrase made something split inside me. A flicker of that other thing I went through years ago. The lights in the woods, the time loss, the voices I could never explain. I'd buried all of it, convinced myself it was trauma, a breakdown. But now, I wasn't so sure. She stepped aside and motioned for me to follow her, saying there was one more thing I had to see before I could go.
I didn't move, didn't say anything. I think part of me knew I'd already gone too far. I don't know why I followed her. Maybe I was numb by then. Maybe I was afraid of what would happen if I didn't. She led me behind the chapel, down a narrow path lined with tall grass and moss-covered stones. At the end was a small clearing with a single tree in the center and a grave beneath it. My name was carved into the stone. No dates, just Elijah Marek. He finally came home. My legs gave out. I dropped to my knees, not crying, not breathing, just staring. She knelt beside me and whispered, "Now you understand. We didn't find you. You remembered us." I don't know how long I sat there, but when I looked up, I was alone. I left that night, or at least I think I did. I don't remember the hike back, just waking up in my tent, everything dry, like no time had passed. But my GPS was working again, and the ridge was exactly where it should have been. I got back to town and tried to look up the village. Nothing. No records, no signs. And I don't tell people what happened. They'd say it was a dream or psychosis or flashbacks from what happened in Oregon. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And the worst part is, ever since that night, I've been waking up with dirt under my nails. Dirt I can't explain. If anyone else has ever stumbled across a place that shouldn't exist and felt like it already knew you, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 7. I'm not the kind of guy who jumps at shadows. I've dissected frogs, cataloged fungal spores, and spent 3 months waist-deep in swamp water documenting amphibian migration patterns. Fear just isn't part of the job description. So when I got the offer to join a biological research station deep in the Amazon, I was more excited about the mosquito population than any of the ghost stories the locals whispered at the edge of town. One of them, a gaunt old man with a cataract in one eye, told me not to stay past Duas y Once. I thought he was talking about some kind of jungle curfew. Later I realized he meant 2:11 a.m. The station itself was nothing special. A few prefab huts connected by wooden walkways, generators that coughed more than they ran, and a radio tower that looked like it had been pieced together by a drunk welder. We were 5 researchers, all biologists, all skeptical as hell. The first night was typical: heat, bugs, and the constant whir of the forest. But at exactly 2:11 a.m., the radio in the main hut crackled to life. Not with static, not with interference, but with a sound I still can't explain without sounding insane. A child's laughter. Light, playful, unmistakably human. And the weirdest part? The damn radio wasn't even plugged in. I looked at Javier, he was closest to the equipment, and raised an eyebrow. He just shrugged, muttering something about maybe residual signal or interference bouncing from another station. Logical, sure, but we all knew the nearest active radio outpost was over 40 miles away. And it didn't make sense that a voice, a child's voice, would come through crystal clear like that. We chalked it up to weird atmospheric conditions and went back to logging specimen data. I even joked that maybe the rainforest was trying to prank us. No one laughed. The next night, same time, 2:11 a.m. on the dot. The radio again. This time it played a little melody, like a lullaby hummed by a child. We checked the power, still unplugged. We swapped out the radio with a backup unit from storage, batteries removed. Didn't matter. The laughter returned. The laugh came again, but this time it was closer. Not through the radio, not exactly. It was like it echoed both from the speaker and from the tree line just outside the hut. We stepped out with flashlights, sweeping the edge of the jungle. Nothing. Not even an animal scurrying off. And if you've ever spent time in the Amazon, you know that silence is not natural. The forest is always buzzing, chirping, croaking. But for those few minutes, it was dead quiet. I told myself maybe a jaguar nearby scared everything off. Maybe.
We decided to move camp after that, packed up everything, even dismantled the antenna, and hiked 6 miles upriver to a new clearing. New location, new start. No ghosts, no weird jungle static. That night, we sat around drinking instant coffee and laughing about how spooked we'd gotten. We didn't even set up the radios, just to be safe. But at 2:11 a.m., from inside the locked storage crate where the unplugged radios were packed, came that same laugh. It was fainter, muffled through layers of gear and plastic, but still clear. And this time, no one said a word. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay in my hammock, mosquito net pulled tight, ears straining for any sound beyond the usual forest hum. I kept thinking about the way the laugh had sounded. Not recorded, not electronic. It had breath behind it, depth, like it had been in the room with us. Around 3 a.m., I finally drifted off. Just before I did, I thought I heard soft footsteps in the dirt outside my tent. I told myself it was an armadillo. In the morning, I found bare footprints, tiny ones, like a child's. They circled my tent, twice. Javier wanted to go back to the city, said he had a fever, and maybe he did. He was sweating and shaking like hell. Camilla was pale and quiet. She kept fingering this little wooden charm her grandmother gave her before she left for the trip. The rest of us tried to act like it was no big deal, but no one made jokes anymore. That night, we didn't wait for the laugh. We stayed up, lights on, radios buried under gear. But it didn't need the radios anymore. At 2:11 a.m., we heard it right between our tents, right in the clearing, clear as day. A child laughing softly, like it was playing hide and seek with us. I snapped that night, stormed out into the clearing with a machete, screaming into the dark like an idiot. You want something? Come out then. I don't know what I expected. Maybe a wild animal, maybe one of the locals playing a prank. But there was nothing. Just the dense black of the forest pressing in, so thick it felt like it could breathe. I turned around to head back and nearly tripped over something. A toy, just sitting there in the dirt. A small wooden top, carved crudely, like something a kid would make in art class. It hadn't been there before. We left at first light, abandoned the research, left half the equipment behind. No one argued, no one talked. We hiked 8 hours straight to reach a river outpost with a working radio. When we finally got through to base camp, they sounded surprised, said they hadn't heard from us in 5 days. That made no sense. We'd been checking in every night, or we thought we had. I remember speaking into the mic. I remember hearing replies. But now, thinking back, I can't recall a single word anyone said on the other end. Just static. Or maybe it was something else entirely. Javier quit biology completely, moved to Sao Paulo, never answered any of our messages again. Camilla won't talk about what happened, but I've seen the way she flinches when someone laughs too loudly. As for me, I've gone over every possible explanation. Interference, prank, shared hysteria, I've looked into all of it. But there's one thing I can't explain away. 2 nights ago, back in my apartment in Boston, I woke up at 2:11 a.m. to the sound of a laugh coming through my baby monitor. I don't have a baby. I don't even own a monitor. But the sound came from my living room. I tore the place apart, found nothing. No devices, no signs of entry. Just that same wooden top, resting on my kitchen counter. I burned it, but I'm not sure it mattered. Last night, I heard it again. This time, outside my bedroom door. Same time, same sound. I've stopped sleeping. I don't know if this thing followed me, or if it was never about the jungle to begin with. Maybe it just needed me to listen. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 8. I've hiked through a lot of stillness. We laughed about it, of course, called it God's airplane mode. There were 4 of us, me, Eric, Jules, and Cam. We do this yearly, A backwoods camping trip to get off grid, detox from screens, and pretend we're rugged while secretly using biodegradable baby wipes. Eric brought along these audio recorders he was obsessed with, said he wanted to document the raw sounds of the wild. Spoiler, on the first night, the wild sounded like Jules snoring and Cam farting in his sleep. Nothing spooky, nothing interesting. But when we came back the next day to collect our stuff, that's when things started getting seriously messed up. First off, our camp looked exactly like we left it. No broken branches, no animal tracks, no signs of weather. Just our gear, untouched, like time itself took the day off. The only thing that felt off was us. Eric kept rubbing his arms like he had a chill, even though it was 75 and sunny. Jules made a dumb joke about the forest resetting itself like a glitchy video game, and I laughed. But something about the way the trees stood, perfectly still, not a single leaf twitching, made me feel like we were being watched. Not by an animal, by the place itself. We packed up, joked our way through breakfast, and only got serious when Eric decided to play back the audio logs from the night before. He queued them up on his little recorder, smiling like a proud dad. The first hour? Just our usual nonsense, snoring, crickets, the occasional zipper noise. Then came the timestamp from around 2:13 a.m. That's when things changed. The audio went dead silent for about 30 seconds. And then, screaming. I don't mean someone stubbed their toe or had a nightmare. I mean blood-curdling, primal screaming. And not one of our voices. None of us recognized it. But the recorder said it came from inside the tent. We all just kind of stared at each other like idiots for a few seconds, waiting for someone to say it was a prank. Eric looked the most shaken. His hand was actually trembling. He swore up and down he didn't edit anything, didn't add sound effects, nothing. And I believe him, mostly because he's the kind of guy who can't even update his phone without help. I tried to play devil's advocate, suggested it could be some kind of interference or maybe a wild animal, but the scream? It sounded human. Worse than that, it sounded wrong, like it was coming from someone being peeled open from the inside. Cam cracked a joke, something about banshees or ghosts, but his voice wavered halfway through. We played the rest of the log. More silence. Then, faint whispers. None of us could make out what they were saying, but it wasn't English. Hell, I'm not even sure it was a language. The whispers were overlapping, like a dozen mouths speaking at once, too close to the mic. And again, none of us had been awake then. Eric even pulled out the backup recorder he left outside the tent. Same thing, same scream, same whispers. That's when it really hit us. Whatever it wasn't just in our tent. It was everywhere. We didn't sleep that night. We left the forest just before dusk, packed like we were being chased, and nobody said a word on the drive back. When we got to Cam's place, Eric practically threw the recorders at me and said, "You're the skeptic. You explain it." I tried. I really did. I ran the audio through software, checked the metadata, even synced the timestamp to our phones. Everything lined up. No cuts, no signs of tampering. The scream was there, clean and unedited, along with those overlapping whispers that made my skin crawl just listening to them. I told myself it had to be some messed up coincidence. Maybe a hiker nearby, maybe a prank, maybe. But then, something even weirder happened. I listened to the files again the next morning, thinking I'd find some clue with a fresh head. But the scream had moved. It was in a different part of the file now, closer to the end. Same sound, same intensity, just not where it had been. At first, I thought I was losing it, but I checked the waveform from last night's playback. It was gone from the original timestamp, like the file had shifted while I slept. I called Eric, and he sounded like he hadn't slept at all. "It's changing," he whispered. "Even when we don't touch it, it's changing itself." I wanted to delete the files right then and there, just wipe everything and pretend we'd imagined it. But part of me needed to know.
needed to understand. So I did something incredibly stupid. I stayed up all night listening to the recordings on loop, trying to catch any more changes. Around 3:08 a.m., I heard something new. A voice, low, hoarse.
Cam posted something cryptic on Facebook about the woods being in the wires before deleting his account entirely. Jules won't answer my calls. I tried playing the audio on a different laptop, then an old tape recorder I dug out of my closet. Same result. The files didn't transfer. They followed, like they're burned into the devices themselves. And every time I hit play, I swear the scream sounds more familiar, more like me. Last night, I unplugged everything. No power, no Wi-Fi, no electronics, just candles and silence. And still, at exactly 2:13 a.m., I heard it. Not from speakers, not through headphones, from inside my room. That same scream, echoing off the walls like the air itself was remembering it. I didn't sleep, I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the recorder I hadn't touched in days, waiting for it to blink or whisper or do something to prove I'm not completely losing my mind. I don't know what we found in those woods. I don't think it wants to hurt us, not yet. I think it just wants to be heard, over and over, through whatever means it can. If anyone else has gone camping near Granville and recorded anything strange, voices, screams, silence too thick to breathe, please tell me. I need to know I'm not the only one. Because the scream came back last night, and this time, it said my name. Story 9. I know what people think when I say this, that I was reckless, stupid even, and maybe I was. But when you're 2 months deep into backpacking solo through the Rockies, and someone tells you there's a hidden shortcut through the valley that can save you half a day of hiking, you listen. Especially when you're running low on food and colder weather's rolling in. That's what happened to Kevin. He met this old guy, didn't speak a word, just handed him a weird, stained scrap of paper with a hand-drawn map on it. The next morning, Kevin was gone, left before sunrise. No note, just vanished. I waited until late afternoon, thinking maybe he'd just gone ahead. But then I got curious, or maybe just stupid, like I said, and followed the rough path sketched on that map myself. It wasn't on any of our actual trail guides, but I recognized a few landmarks from where we'd camped. That's how I ended up squeezing through a narrow gap between two boulders, descending into a part of the forest I swear looked untouched for decades. Quiet in a way that made your ears ring. 30 minutes in, I saw something partially buried under some moss and dead leaves. It was my lighter, the red one I'd lost a week ago. At first, I thought I was misremembering. Maybe I dropped the lighter earlier and just didn't notice. But then I saw my old bandana, the one I'd used as a makeshift tourniquet back in Banff after scraping my leg. It was stuffed under a tree root like someone had tried to hide it. I knelt down, pulled at it, and felt something shift beneath the dirt. I didn't dig further. I just stood there, heart hammering, this rising feeling in my chest like I'd walked into a place I wasn't supposed to find. The trees got denser after that, and something about the air felt off. Not colder, not warmer, just wrong. Like it didn't belong to the rest of the forest. I kept walking, telling myself it was just a weird coincidence. A lost lighter and a dropped rag didn't mean anything. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being led, that someone wanted me to keep going. I know how that sounds, believe me. But the trail, if you could even call it that, started looking more like a pattern than a path, like it had been laid out, not worn down. About an hour in, the silence started to change. It wasn't just quiet anymore. It was pressurized, like sound itself had been sucked out of the air, leaving only the crunch of my boots and my breathing, which by then had gotten way too loud in my own ears. I stopped to drink some water, and that's when I noticed something else. No birds, no bugs, not even the wind through the trees, just stillness.
And that kind of stillness does something to your head. You start imagining things, or at least that's what I told myself when I saw the figure standing off the path, maybe 50 feet ahead. He was just there, not moving, not doing anything at all, just facing me maybe. I couldn't really tell. His head was tilted down. Worn jacket, old pack slung over one shoulder, one boot untied. I called out, "Hey, Kevin?" Nothing, not a twitch. I stepped forward, branches cracking underfoot, and blinked, and he was gone. Just gone. No running, no footsteps. Like he'd been a slide projected in.
The light had shifted too, like the sun had dipped behind something massive, even though there wasn't a cloud in the sky when I started. I tried retracing my steps, counting my breaths, looking for that narrow gap between the boulders. But all I saw was forest, and more forest, and trees that somehow looked like they were leaning in. At some point, I stopped pretending I knew where I was going and just walked. My thoughts were unraveling, looping back on themselves. I kept remembering that old man Kevin mentioned, said he never spoke, just smiled with too many teeth. I hadn't believed him, thought it was one of his travel stories, the kind backpackers trade around fires to sound interesting. But now I couldn't stop thinking about that map, how it wasn't torn or crumpled despite being hand-drawn, how the ink hadn't bled even though it rained that night. It was like it wanted to survive the weather, like it was meant to be found. I finally stopped when I recognized something ahead, a clearing, not large, maybe 20 feet across, surrounded by dense pine. In the center was a pile of stones, carefully stacked, like a cairn. And just beside it, half buried in the soil, was Kevin's backpack. I recognized the patch of the Canadian flag sewn onto the back. My stomach dropped. I ran over, started pulling at it, calling his name like an idiot. But the pack was full of dirt, heavy, like it had been buried for days, weeks even. And then I saw it. A second pile, smaller, beside the first. Sticking out from under it, the cuff of my jacket. I stumbled back so fast I nearly fell. That was my jacket, the one I was wearing 3 days ago before switching to my heavier one. I dropped it at a hostel in Jasper, I was sure of it. But there it was, half covered by stones in the middle of nowhere, in a place no one was supposed to be. My throat tightened. I didn't hear anything approach. I didn't feel any shift in the air, but I knew I wasn't alone anymore. I could feel eyes, not just one set, several, from all around me, just beyond the tree line, watching, waiting. I didn't run. I couldn't. My legs wouldn't work the way they should. It felt like the ground itself was holding me there, like my feet were sinking, even though the soil was dry. I don't remember how I got out. Not really. There's a stretch of time, maybe an hour, maybe more, that's just gone. The next thing I knew, I was stumbling through the same narrow gap between the boulders, gasping for air like I'd been underwater. My pack was lighter than before. When I checked, my map, the real one, was gone. In its place was that same hand-drawn scrap, now crumpled and wet, with new markings I swear weren't there before. I haven't told anyone this in person, not really. I just packed up and got the hell out of there. Kevin was never found. They said he probably slipped, maybe got caught in a rock slide, but I know better. That trail wasn't on any map because it wasn't meant to exist. Or maybe it was meant to exist only for us, for whoever takes the damn thing from that old man. I still have the paper. I've tried to burn it, rip it, toss it, but it always ends up back in my gear. And last night, I woke up to find it pinned to my pillow, with your name written across the top. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 10. They say the jungle doesn't give back what it takes. I used to roll my eyes every time some local guide whispered that over a beer or a campfire,
trying to scare the newbies. I've worked SAR, search and rescue, in the Amazon for 5 years. I've pulled tourists out of snake nests, dragged researchers back half-starved and feverish, even found a couple of skeletons. Nothing mystical about it. People get lost, they panic, they die. End of story. At least, that's what I believed. Until last July, when Clara Vargas went missing near the Alto Madre Trail. It was day 4 of the search. The air was thick with that wet, green smell. Overripe fruit, rotting leaves, sweat. We were camped by a river bend, all 5 of us, our hammocks swinging like carcasses in the canopy's gloom. Around 11 p.m., I was on fire watch, poking at embers with a stick, half asleep, when I heard soft footsteps behind me. I turned, expecting one of the guys. Instead, a girl sat there by the fire, pale, mud-splattered, silent, and looking straight at me with the flattest, blackest eyes I've ever seen on a human face. I knew immediately it was her, Clara. Same red jacket from the missing persons photo, same matted hair clinging to her face. But like the muscles weren't syncing up quite how they should, like someone wearing a human expression for the first time. I called for the others. I didn't want to touch her. Something in me, something deep, said not to. Raul came running out of his hammock, flashlight in hand, and when he saw her, he froze. "Jesus," he whispered, "we found her." But even he didn't move closer. We just stood there like idiots, watching her stare. And then, slowly, too slowly, she turned her head toward him, like her neck was resisting, like gravity worked differently for her. That was when Raul stepped back. "She's not right," he muttered. "That's not—" He didn't finish. We both just stood there, waiting for her to do something. She never did. Eventually, we set up a tarp and gave her a blanket. She still hadn't spoken, hadn't moved, except for that one neck turn. Raul wanted to radio in, call the chopper early, but the clouds were too thick. "We'll wait until morning," I said, trying to sound in control. Honestly, I just didn't want to deal with the dead-eyed girl sitting 10 feet from my hammock. We left her by the fire, still upright, still staring, while the rest of us tried to sleep. I closed my eyes, but all I could picture was her silhouette against the flames. Her not blinking, not shivering, not breathing. But she had to be breathing, right? I woke up before sunrise to the sound of birds. Too many birds. The jungle has a rhythm, a pattern of calls and silences you get used to. But that morning, it was off. Like everything was trying to cover up the absence of something else. I sat up, looked toward the fire. The tarp was there. The blanket was there. Clara was not. I thought maybe she wandered off to pee or something, but her footprints, the ones Raul pointed out last night in the mud, they were gone. Not trampled, not rained out, just erased, as if she'd never sat there at all. Raul swore up and down that he hadn't heard her move during the night. Neither had I. The other guys assumed she must have wandered off again, maybe confused or in shock. We split up and combed the area, called her name for hours. Nothing. Not a snapped branch, not a footprint, not even the scent dogs could pick up. And I know how that sounds. Jungle terrain, tricky conditions, sure. But that area had soft, wet soil. She should have left something. It was like she'd just vanished into the air. Raul stopped talking about her entirely after that, wouldn't even say her name. That night, we sat around the same fire, too tired to talk. No jokes, no stories, just the sounds of the jungle pressing in. I couldn't stop looking at the spot where she'd been sitting. The blanket still lay there, untouched. I didn't want to move it, didn't want to touch it. At some point, I got up to relieve myself behind the trees. Just a couple minutes, tops. When I came back, the blanket was folded neatly beside the fire. None of the guys claimed to do it, and nobody laughed when I asked. I didn't sleep that night. I kept my back to a tree, flashlight in hand, ears tuned to every crackle and whisper in the dark. Around 3 a.m., I heard it. Not footsteps, not branches breaking. Breathing. Soft, uneven breathing, just beyond the firelight. I called out, expecting one of the guys, but no one answered. I swung the light toward the sound. Nothing. Just trees. But when I turned back, the blanket was gone. Again. Like it had simply decided to stop existing. At dawn, the Ranger helicopter finally reached us. We packed up in silence. As they lifted us out one by one, I looked down at the bend in the river. From the air, I could see something the trees had hidden. A narrow footpath, not on any map, leading deeper into the jungle. Standing at the edge of it was a small figure in red. Just standing there, facing the trees. Not waving, not moving. I didn't tell anyone what I saw. I just told them Clara was still missing. They called off the search 3 days later. Official reports said she probably drowned or got dragged off by a jaguar, something that leaves no trace. Her family held a memorial service back in Lima. I didn't go. I stayed in camp another week, helping sort equipment and process paperwork. But every night, I'd wake up around 2:45 a.m. with that same sound in my ears, breathing just outside the tent, too soft to track, too steady to be imagined, and always, always followed by the smell of smoke, wood smoke, from a fire that wasn't there. It's been months now, and I still don't sleep through the night, not without dreaming of that stare or seeing red out of the corner of my eye. The worst part?
I've always said that the woods are only scary if you've watched too many horror movies or if you're dumb enough to forget your bug spray. So, when my friend Nate started acting all weird about a creepy path we found during our camping trip, I naturally assumed he'd just hit his THC vape a little too hard. It was barely a trail, more like a slit in the trees choked with ivy and thorn brush. Still, something about it looked too deliberate, like it hadn't been made by animals, but by someone who didn't want to be followed. We joked about it the rest of the afternoon. Nate said it looked like a Blair Witch thing. I told him the only thing witchy out here was his attitude. But when the sun started dipping, we got curious. We grabbed our phones and flashlights and decided to check it out for real. The trail led us deeper than expected, at least half a mile, maybe more. At the end, there was this weird little setup. Stones in a circle, bones, we hoped they were animal, and what looked like a doll made of bark and twine propped on a stump. A shrine, I guess? Creepy? Sure, but also kinda lame. We took a few pics, laughed about how it was probably a Boy Scout art project, and headed back before it got dark. Back at camp, we showed the photos to Jess and Liv, who'd stayed behind to guard the snacks, which basically meant drinking half the boxed wine and playing Uno. Jess zoomed in on one shot and said, "Ew, it's looking at the camera." And I rolled my eyes so hard I nearly sprained something. It was a twig doll, for God's sake. No eyes, no face, just some moss and knots. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something about it had shifted between when I saw it in person and the photo. Like it was sitting straighter, or maybe just the angle. I told myself it was just the flashlight glare. Later that night, we decided to go back and get better footage, for TikTok clout. We packed up some gear, better flashlights, a GoPro, even Nate's dumb Spirit Box app that never works. But when we got to the spot where the trail had been, it was gone. I don't mean we missed it. I mean the wall of trees was just solid now. No slit in the ivy, no break in the underbrush. Just forest, like the trail had never existed. Nate swore we were in the right place, even showed the GPS marker he'd pinned. But the more we looked, the more it felt like the woods were screwing with us, shifting subtly. And then Jess screamed. She was pointing toward the camp. At first, I didn't get it. The tents were still there, the fire pit, the stupid folding chairs. Nothing seemed wrong. Then I followed her finger more closely and saw it. The shrine. The exact same one. Same mossy bark doll, same circle of stones. But now it was here, maybe 30 feet from where we slept.
We hadn't brought it back. We hadn't even touched it. Yet there it was, like it had decided we took too long to visit again and came looking for us instead. I laughed, loud, forced, that kind of laugh you do when your brain refuses to process something and just fills the gap with noise. Nate didn't laugh. Liv looked like she was about to cry. Jess pulled out her phone and started recording, the only smart one among us. I walked up to the thing, partly to prove it was fake, partly because, I don't know, I felt challenged. The doll was cold, damp, and something sticky clung to its back, like tree sap, but darker. I wiped it on my jeans without thinking. Then I noticed something that made my stomach flip. A strand of long red hair tangled in the twine. Jess had red hair. We argued for an hour about what to do. Nate wanted to hike back to the car. Never mind, it was pitch black and nearly a 2-hour walk. Liv just kept saying she didn't feel right, over and over like a mantra. Jess wanted to burn the shrine, which honestly didn't sound like a bad idea at that point. Me? I still thought maybe someone was messing with us. Some weird backwoods prank, maybe. But even as I said it out loud, I didn't really believe it. Because we checked the photos again, the ones from earlier, and in those, the doll had been missing the strand of red hair. That wasn't something you overlook. We stayed up all night, taking turns watching the tree line. Around 3 a.m., the fire was dying down when I noticed something. The sounds of the woods had stopped. No wind, no bugs, no rustling branches, just silence. The kind of silence that makes your ears ring. Then came the crunching, slow, deliberate, from different directions. First behind the tents, then near the cooler, then right at the edge of the clearing where our flashlights couldn't quite reach. I called out, "Very funny, whoever the hell you are." And instantly, we practically ran back to the trailhead, checking over our shoulders every few minutes like idiots in a found footage film. When we finally got to the car, Liv unlocked it before we even got the doors open and froze. There, on the hood, was the twig doll. The same one. Same posture, same twine, same damn red hair tied into its back. Nate dropped his phone. Jess just whispered, "We didn't bring it. We didn't bring it." But somehow, it was always one step ahead. I drove like hell back to the city. Nobody talked much. Liv kept twisting her hair around her fingers, pulling at it so hard I thought she'd rip it out. When I finally dropped everyone off and got home, I laughed again. Sarcastic, hollow, my usual defense mechanism. I told myself it was over. Probably someone local who saw our GPS post and decided to scare a bunch of clueless campers. Just coincidence, just timing, nothing more. But that night, while I was brushing my teeth, I heard the crunching again, just outside my bathroom window. I live on the 3rd floor. I didn't look. I couldn't. I just backed out of the bathroom and sat on the floor of my hallway, lights on, holding my phone like it could protect me. The crunching stopped after a few minutes, but I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that twisted little face made of bark and moss. I tried deleting the photos we took, but they wouldn't go. No error message. They just stayed there, like the phone wanted me to keep them. I threw it in the freezer. Don't ask me why. It made sense in the moment. That was 3 days ago. I haven't seen the shrine again. Yet. But every morning, when I go to unlock my door, I notice something new. A smear of sap on the doorknob. Pine needles on my doormat. This morning, a single red hair caught in the hinge. I haven't heard from Jess since we got back. Her phone just goes to voicemail. And Nate? He texted once, "Do not go back." That's it. So I'm posting this here because honestly, I don't know what else to do. If anyone else has ever seen one of those things, if it ever followed you home, please tell me how to make it stop. Story 12. I don't believe in spirits, curses, or bad energy.
I'm the guy who books horror-themed tours just to roll my eyes through them. So when our guide disappeared into the trees during a hiking trip in northern Argentina, my first thought was bathroom break. Or maybe he wanted to freak out the tourists, very on brand for these off-the-grid eco-tours. But when he came back, he was the one making everyone uncomfortable. Not because of what he said, but because he didn't say a damn thing. No sorry, got turned around, or just checking something. Just silence. His name was Omar, and before the hike, he'd been chatty to the point of annoying, throwing in local legends, warning us about places that watch you back. Now, he stared straight ahead, blinking maybe once in 5 minutes. We laughed it off at first. Our photographer, Jenna, even whispered, maybe he saw the chupacabra. But Omar didn't even flinch. He just stood there, still, like he was waiting for a cue. We started walking again, slower this time. No one said it out loud, but the mood had shifted. Even the jungle felt heavier, like the air had thickened. Omar led us, but something was off about the way he moved. Too stiff, like each step was measured, rehearsed. He didn't look back once to check on us. And then came the first voice, clear as day from up ahead. This trail looks familiar. It was Jenna's voice, except she hadn't spoken. She froze. Did you guys hear that? She asked, her voice cracking. We all had. It wasn't an echo. It was her. Exactly. Same tone, same phrasing, just delayed. It came from Omar's direction. I looked at him. His mouth wasn't moving. He kept walking, same pace, same robotic stride. Then, a few seconds later, my own voice echoed through the trees. Probably just a bird or something. But I hadn't said that out loud. Not yet. That's when my sarcasm started to dry up. I looked back at the group, 5 of us, all wide-eyed and dead quiet. Omar finally stopped at a bend in the trail near this massive tree with roots like twisted limbs crawling over the path. He didn't turn to face us. He just stood there, still. Then, without moving his mouth, Jenna's voice came out again. Guys, I don't like this. But it was too perfect.
Nothing. But the mimicry kept happening, now in rapid, broken clips. Jenna's laugh cut in half. My voice saying, "Wait up," followed by Chris's deep chuckle, stitched together like bad editing. It wasn't just mimicry. It was imitation with glitches, delays, misplaced timing. As if something was trying to learn how we sounded but didn't understand when or why we said the things we did. That's when Jenna lost it. She grabbed my arm and whispered, "That's not him. We need to leave, now." Her eyes were full of tears, but her voice was steady, too steady, like she was trying not to panic. And then, like it had been listening, the Omar thing repeated her exact words. Same whisper, same fear, a full 10 seconds after she said them. "That's not him. We need to leave, now." It sounded like her, but empty, like someone wearing her skin from the inside out. We didn't even talk about it. We just turned and started walking back the way we came, fast. Omar didn't follow right away. I glanced back once, and he was still standing by that tree, arms limp at his sides. But then I heard it. My voice again, loud and urgent. "Go, go." Only I hadn't said a word. It came from just behind us. I didn't look back again after that. I didn't want to see what face would be wearing my voice next. The jungle felt different on the way out. Quieter. Wrong. The birds had stopped. Even the insects. We walked for what felt like an hour, but the path didn't look the same anymore. Trees were in the wrong places. A sign that we'd passed earlier, Sendero Rocas Vivas, was missing completely. And then we heard laughter. Not all at once, but layered. Chris's deep chuckle, Jenna's snort, my dry laugh, all at once, echoing from the trees. too loud, too close, out of sync. We eventually stumbled out of the trees and onto the dirt road where the van was parked. It was still there. Keys under the tire, just like our guide had promised before the hike. We didn't wait. We drove until the jungle disappeared behind us and the sun started to come up. No one said a word. Not until Jenna broke the silence, hours later, just one sentence. His eyes never moved. I hadn't realized it until then, but it was true. Omar had stared at the same point the entire time. We reported it, of course. Local authorities searched the trail, found nothing. No sign of Omar. They said he probably just got lost. These things happen. But 2 nights ago, around 2 a.m., I was reviewing the footage on Jenna's camera. Most of it was blurry, but one clip, right before we turned back, caught Omar's silhouette. The audio plays my voice saying we should head back. But in the reflection on Jenna's lens, I'm not speaking. I wasn't even facing the camera. If anyone's ever experienced something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 13. I've been flying drones for 6 years. Jungle surveys, archaeological overlays, heat mapping for deforestation, you name it. I'm not some weekend hobbyist chasing butterflies. This is my job, and I treat it like science. If the battery says 29 minutes of airtime, I'm landing at 28. If there's static in the signal, I check the antennas. Everything has an explanation, or at least it used to. Because 3 weeks ago, while scrubbing through thermal footage from a canopy sweep in the Amazon, I saw something. A figure, just at the tree line, standing still. At first, I thought it was just one of the researchers. Maybe Ronaldo or Jules had wandered out of frame before I launched. But the next clip showed the same figure again. Same position, same distance. Like it had moved just enough to stay out of my actual sightline, but not the drone's. I laughed it off. Motion blur, bad lighting, a monkey standing upright for half a second. But I kept noticing it. Different clips, different days, different locations, and always the same thing. A person-shaped blotch, just barely visible at the far edge of the thermal readout. Never moving, never closer, never gone. The jungle plays tricks on you. That's what everyone says. Sound echoes wrong, shadows move with the wind, and animals know how to stay hiding better than we know how to find them. So I kept telling myself it was pareidolia, some mental glitch where you see patterns that aren't there. Still, I started doing something I'd never done before, pausing each flight recording and scanning the tree line frame by frame. It became a compulsion, and every damn time it was there.
A shadow, barely visible through the leaves. It was gone in the next frame. I showed it to Jules, laughing it off like, "Hey, Bigfoot's got a cousin out here." But she didn't laugh. She just frowned and said, "That tree looks like it's facing you," which made no sense until I looked again. It wasn't the tree. The shape wasn't rough or jagged. It was too smooth, too upright. It had definition. Shoulders. A head tilted ever so slightly, like it was listening. I zoomed in as far as my phone would allow, and my stomach turned. There were no facial features. Just a faint oval where a face should have been, like something imitating a human, but forgetting the details. I didn't tell anyone else, not because I was scared. I mean, come on, it was probably just compression artifacts or heat haze, but because I didn't want to hear myself say the words out loud. A few days later, I decided to test it. I deliberately walked away from camp during my break into a clearing where the drone's range was optimal and visibility high. I launched the drone, waited for it to get altitude, and stood perfectly still for 10 minutes. When I reviewed the footage that night, my hands went cold. The figure was there again, only this time it had moved closer. Not by much, but enough. 10 feet closer than before. I measured it. I rewound it. I tried to replicate the position with one of our crew. It wasn't one of us. I'd have seen them.
After that, I started wearing my headset during flights, streaming the drone feed live as I walked, a full 360 awareness loop just to make sure nothing snuck up on me. It made me feel like a lunatic, spinning in circles in the middle of the jungle while a buzzing quadcopter danced overhead. But I didn't care. I needed to see it happen in real time. And eventually, I did. On one of the final sweeps before we backed out, I caught it moving. Not fast, just a slow step to the side, like it was repositioning to stay just out of sight. Like it knew. I froze. For the first time in my life, I didn't know what to do. I stopped walking. The drone hovered in place, and the figure, the thing, stopped too, as if it had been waiting for me to notice. My earpiece was silent except for the low hum of the rotors. The air around me felt heavier, like the jungle itself was holding its breath. I didn't move. Neither did it. Not until I blinked. In that fraction of a second, between closing and opening my eyes, it vanished from the screen. No sound, no movement, just gone. That night, I didn't sleep. I went through every clip I had from every drone flight of the entire expedition. I stopped pretending it was a coincidence. The thing, whatever it was, had been following me since the first day. Always at the same distance, always when I was alone. Never during group surveys, never when someone else launched. Just me. Like it had picked me. I started noticing patterns I'd missed before. Birds going silent in certain frames. Leaves not swaying, even when everything else moved with the wind. Little inconsistencies, like reality glitching around it. I thought about telling the others, but what could I say? Hey, I think there's a face-stealing forest ghost stalking me through drone footage. Yeah, that would have gone over great. So I stayed quiet. We finished our final sweeps, we packed up, we left the jungle behind. But here's the part that really matters. The part I can't explain away. 2 days ago, back home, I launched my drone in my backyard, just for fun. Clear skies, suburban trees, perfect signal. And when I reviewed the footage, it was there again, at the edge of the yard, closer than before. I didn't even notice it at first. It blended in with the trees, like it always does. But frame by frame, it emerged, just a silhouette, but unmistakable now. It wasn't pretending to be human anymore. It had grown taller. Its limbs hung too low. The head was tilted again, but now it was leaning forward, like it was listening, watching harder. I haven't flown the drone since. I haven't left the house. Every window is locked. Every night I check the corners of my backyard. I swear, I can feel it watching me even when I'm not looking. I want to believe this is just residual stress, that my brain hasn't caught up from weeks of isolation and jungle noise. But yesterday, I found something under the drone landing pad in my yard. A single, perfect footprint. Barefoot, but not human. Toes too long, arched.
But last week, in the northern woods of Washington state, the sound came back. The same pattern, the same timing, the same impossible running. It started on our second night. The 6 of us had set up camp in a clearing near a narrow stream just off a barely marked trail. We'd hiked most of the day, cracked open some beers around the fire, and gone to bed by 11. I was sharing the tent with Jake and Morgan, both out cold within minutes. I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that other trip, the one I never talk about anymore. Then, at exactly 2:13 a.m., the sound started. Fast, heavy, footsteps tearing through the underbrush, circling our tent at full speed. It wasn't just the speed, it was the precision. Whatever it was ran in perfect loops around the tent, never once stumbling, never brushing the fabric, never breaking rhythm. I held my breath, convinced it had to be some animal, maybe a coyote or a deer. But no animal runs like that, not in circles, not without making a single sound beyond those thunderous steps.
I wanted to wake Jake, but I couldn't move. I just listened as the running continued. 30 seconds, a minute, then nothing. In the morning, I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it, that it was some bizarre echo in the woods or a leftover dream, until I saw the ground. Jake had unzipped the tent and said, "Damn, did it rain last night?" The soil was soft, wet, perfect for showing prints. And there were prints, just not the kind I expected. Not shoe prints, not hooves. Around the entire perimeter of our tent, embedded deep into the earth, were claw marks. 4 deep grooves, like fingers or toes, dragging at full speed in a perfect circle. Jake laughed it off. "Probably a raccoon or something," he said, kneeling to poke at the gouges with a stick. "They've got creepy hands." But Morgan didn't look convinced. Neither was I. The spacing was too wide, each mark over a foot apart. Whatever made those prints had a stride like a sprinter and claws long enough to tear into packed earth without slowing down. Still, no one said anything else. We just packed up for the day's hike, pretending we weren't already scared. That night, none of us mentioned what happened. We were tired, sore, sunburned. It almost felt normal again. We cooked freeze-dried meals over the fire and swapped dumb stories until we couldn't keep our eyes open. By midnight, we were out. But I woke up again at 2:13 a.m., on the dot. The sound was back, the same frantic circling, like someone sprinting on all fours around us. But this time, it wasn't just our tent. I could hear it moving, looping around the others too. And then, something sniffed at the flap, real slow, right by my face. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stared at the thin layer of fabric inches from my face, where the noise had stopped. There was this awful pause, like it was listening. Then I heard it inhale again, slower this time, like it was learning me, my scent, my breathing pattern. I thought about unzipping the flap and flashing my light, but some deeper part of me, the part I've spent years trying to silence, screamed not to. Whatever was out there wasn't curious. It knew. The next morning, no one joked. No one laughed. Jake's tent was zipped open from the outside. Morgan said she heard running too, but hers had gone in the opposite direction, like it was circling us all, independently. We checked every tent, every tree trunk, every rock. Same claw marks, same perfect loops. No scat, no fur, no tracks leading in or out. Just those endless, impossible paths, carved like something was drawing around us. I finally told them. Not everything, just enough to let them know this wasn't new to me. But I left out the worst part. The worst part was what I remembered from the first time, something I hadn't thought about in years until I saw those claw marks again. Back then, it had followed us for 3 nights before someone went missing. No blood, no signs of struggle, just a sleeping bag unzipped from the inside and a circle of claw marks outside the tent. I'd convinced myself it was coincidence, that maybe he just wandered off and got lost. But seeing those same marks now, years later, with different people, it felt like I'd brought it with me. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay with my flashlight in one hand and a knife in the other, counting every second past 2:13. The running came again, louder, closer, and then it stopped. I asked the guy at the desk if anyone had reported strange animal behavior in the area. He just stared at me a second too long before shaking his head. But as we walked away, I noticed something behind the desk, a corkboard with a map and pins. 3 pins, all near where we camped. Handwritten dates, all recent. We've been home for 4 days. I haven't slept more than a couple hours. Last night, at 2:13 a.m., I heard something running past my apartment window. I live on the 3rd floor. There were no footsteps in the hallway, but when I checked the fire escape in the morning, I found 4 long gouges in the metal railing, like claws trying to stop. I thought I'd left that thing behind in the woods. I don't think it works like that. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 15. I'm not the kind of person who spooks easily. Horror movies bore me, ghost stories make me roll my eyes, and I've always been the rational one in my friend group, the guy who says there's gotta be a logical explanation. That's what I kept telling myself when I found the journal. I was crouched by the river, rinsing mud off my boots after a long hike, when I saw it, a black, waterproof notebook, half buried in the silt like it had washed up during the night. It looked almost new, not swollen from water damage, no algae, no smell, just sitting there, waiting. I almost didn't open it, but curiosity is a disease, and I'm terminal. I flipped it open to the first page, expecting blank sheets or maybe some fisherman's notes. Instead, I found a header written in precise block letters, Expedition Log, Day 1. That wouldn't have been weird, except it listed my name, along with the names of my 3 friends, the GPS coordinates of our current location, and even the exact time we'd started our hike the day before. And beneath that, it described something we hadn't done yet, a trail we hadn't taken, a landmark we hadn't reached. I checked the date at the top of the page. It was 3 weeks from now. At first, I assumed it was some kind of elaborate prank. Maybe one of the guys planted it. Chris loved that kind of psychological mind game bullshit. But the more I read, the less funny it felt. The journal described conversations we hadn't had yet, like word for word. It even mentioned that I'd make a joke about dying of mosquito bites before seeing anything cool, which I had said that morning. I skimmed through the entries, trying to find something, anything, that would expose it as fake. But the handwriting never changed, the voice was consistent, and it knew things that hadn't happened yet. I didn't tell the others right away. Honestly, I thought I could debunk it on my own. I figured maybe someone left it behind from a different trip, and it was just a freak coincidence that the names matched. Maybe we were walking the same path someone else had taken years ago. But the journal referenced equipment we'd just bought for this trip. Our water filter model, the brand of Chris's boots. Hell, it even described the exact dent on Mia's canteen from when she dropped it getting out of the truck. I don't know how to explain the feeling of reading your own future laid out in handwriting that isn't yours, but feels like it could be. Things got worse when I reached the entry for day 3. That's when the tone shifted. The writing became erratic, jittery, like the person was rushing or panicking. It said we would get lost, that the trail would disappear behind us like it was never there to begin with, that something in the woods was following us, mimicking our voices at night. I stopped reading. I don't scare easy, remember, but my hands were shaking. I looked up at the trees, trying to laugh it off, but every bird call felt staged. Every branch crunch made me flinch. And worst of all, the next page described me hiding the journal, exactly where I ended up hiding it. I decided to test it. I took a pen from my pack, turned to a blank page at the end, and wrote, "We're not lost. Nothing's out there. We're leaving tomorrow morning." I snapped the book shut and shoved it deep in my bag. That night, I told the others I found a weird notebook someone left behind, probably a creative writing project. Chris called dibs on reading it later. Mia just shrugged. None of them seemed fazed, probably because I left out the part about it predicting the future and describing us. I told myself I'd throw it in the fire before bed. I didn't. Around midnight, I woke up to whispering outside the tent. At first, I thought it was Chris and Mia talking, maybe arguing. Their voices sounded off, like they were muffled through static. But when I unzipped the flap, the camp was empty. Everyone was still asleep. Even the fire had died out, just glowing embers left. I stood there, barefoot in the cold dirt, trying to trace where the whispers were coming from.
They stopped as soon as I stepped outside. That's when I realized something else was wrong. The journal, the one I had buried under a pile of clothes in my pack, was sitting right on top of my sleeping bag. I didn't open it. I should have, but I couldn't bring myself to touch it. I just stared at it like it might start writing on its own.
In the morning, I asked if anyone had gone through my stuff, tried to sound casual. Chris laughed it off, and Mia gave me a look like I was being paranoid. I didn't press it. We packed up and moved deeper into the forest like we'd planned, but something was wrong with the trail. Trees we passed looked too familiar. Landmarks looped back around. At one point, we crossed the same shallow stream 3 times from different directions. No one wanted to admit it, but I could see it in their faces. They felt it too. That night, the voices came back, louder, clearer. They weren't muffled anymore. They sounded exactly like us. I heard Chris calling my name from somewhere out in the trees, even though I could see him sleeping 2 feet away. Then I heard Mia laughing, the exact way she laughs when she's trying to pretend she's not scared. But it was coming from above us, like from the trees themselves. I didn't sleep. None of us did. By morning, we were pale, silent, and too ashamed to admit we were terrified. That's when Chris finally asked, "Where'd you get that journal again?" I didn't answer him. I just handed it over. He flipped through a few pages, frowning. Then he stopped, looked up at me, then at Mia. "It says, 'I fall tomorrow,'" he muttered. "Break my leg." He laughed after he said it, but it wasn't a real laugh, not even close. We decided to head back that morning. We didn't even argue about it. But no matter which direction we took, we ended up back at the same clearing. By noon, we stopped pretending it was just bad navigation. The trees had rearranged themselves. I swear they had. Chris did fall. Not even an hour after we gave up trying to find the road. His scream echoed through the trees like it bounced off something that shouldn't have been there. His leg was twisted beneath him, bone pushing up under the skin. Exactly like the journal said. While Mia wrapped his leg, I opened the book again, even though every part of me was screaming not to. The last entry was dated for that same day. The handwriting was frantic, letters slanted and uneven. It said we'd build a fire, that Mia would stay awake and I'd do the last watch, that something would come while I was alone. And then, nothing. The rest of the page was blank, just a smudge of ink trailing off the bottom like the writer was pulled away mid-sentence. Tonight is my shift. Mia's asleep. Chris keeps mumbling in his dreams, words I can't make out, or maybe don't want to. The journal is sitting in my lap right now, heavy as a cinder block. I've checked every page a dozen times, but there's no ending, just that smear. I keep hearing something move just outside the glow of the fire. It's not an animal, I know that much now. I keep thinking about the voices, about how they sounded more like us the longer we stayed. I don't know what's going to happen when the fire dies out, but if someone finds this, if you find this, please don't follow the river upstream. And if you already did, has the journal found you yet? Story 16. I don't know why I noticed it first. Maybe because I've always been the kind of person who can't stop watching for signs. Eye twitches, a weird pause in conversation, someone tapping their fingers too fast. So when we reached that village, tucked behind the tree line at the end of a trail that wasn't on our GPS, something in me instantly locked into high alert. Everything looked okay, quaint even. But there was this static in the air, like the forest had been holding its breath the whole time we hiked, and now it was exhaling something rotten. There were 5 of us, me, my boyfriend Liam, our friend Carla, and 2 of her hiking buddies I barely knew. We'd followed an overgrown path that veered off the main trail, mostly out of boredom. It wasn't marked on any of our maps, but the wooden archway at its entrance looked almost ceremonial, like someone wanted it found. We joked that we were about to discover a fairy village or some old hermit commune. What we found instead was a handful of small houses with red-tiled roofs and flower boxes lined up along a single dirt road. And people, smiling, standing in front of their homes like they'd been waiting for us. every single one of them smiling, and none of them blinking, like they were painted on. And then there were the children. That was the part that really started to eat at me. They all looked the same. Same eyes, same haircut, same blank expression. I whispered to Liam, "Do you see that?" But he just shrugged and said I was overanalyzing again. We were invited to stay for lunch by an older woman who introduced herself as Marta. She spoke perfect English, but with a stiff rhythm, like someone reciting lines phonetically. Her house was cozy, filled with dried herbs and old wooden furniture that smelled like smoke and lemon whale. But the windows were covered, not with curtains, but thick sheets of black cloth nailed into the frames from the inside. I asked why, and she said, "To keep the light out. It spoils the children." Then she laughed, and I joined in, awkwardly, even though I had no idea what the hell that meant. Lunch was vegetable stew and some kind of dense bread that tasted faintly metallic. The others ate without complaint, chatting with Marta about the trail and how peaceful the area was. I barely touched mine. There was a strange hum in the walls, not loud, but just at the edge of hearing. A low vibration, like an old refrigerator cycling endlessly. I could see Liam giving me those eyes across the table, the ones that said, "Please don't spiral right now." But it was hard not to, especially when I looked out the open doorway and saw 3 of the children just standing there, side by side on the dirt road. Same shirts, same faces, same unblinking stares. They hadn't moved since we'd arrived. After lunch, Marta offered to show us around. No one else in the village spoke, but they all kept smiling as we passed. I tried not to stare too long at any of them, but it was impossible not to notice how synchronized they were. Heads tilting at the same angle, feet stepping back at the same time when we crossed paths. And every single child, the same face, copied and pasted across at least a dozen bodies. I mumbled to Carla that this had to be some kind of performance art commune or prank setup. She laughed and said, "God, you're always so tense. They're just locals." But even she sounded unsure. As the sun started to dip behind the trees, Marta insisted we stay the night. "You'll find the forest less friendly after dark," she said, almost like a warning. The others were all for it. Free shelter, a break from hiking, and a weird story to tell later. But something about the way she said it made my skin crawl. I pulled Liam aside and told him I had a bad feeling that we should leave now before it got dark. He squeezed my hand and whispered, "Just one night. Don't overthink it." I didn't have the energy to argue anymore, but deep down, I already knew we'd made a mistake. We were split into 2 of the village's empty guest houses. I ended up in one with Carla and the 2 others, Jenna and Mark. The house looked clean, but too perfect, like a museum replica of a home. The beds were made, but the pillows were hard and the sheets were stiff, almost waxy. No one else seemed bothered. I tried to settle in, but every creak, every whisper of wind outside the boarded-up windows made my chest tighten. At one point, I got up to use the bathroom and noticed something that made my throat close. The mirror had been removed. In its place was a piece of cloth nailed into the wall, just like the windows. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not really. I drifted in and out, catching short, breathless fragments of rest between long stretches of listening to something faint scraping along the outside wall, like fingernails tracing the wood. I thought about waking Carla, but every time I glanced over, she looked peaceful, unmoving, too unmoving. Eventually, I sat up, heart pounding, and looked out through a tiny gap in the boarded window. At first, I didn't see anything, just darkness. Then, slowly, like a bad photograph developing, I saw them, the children, standing in a semicircle around the house. perfectly still, all facing me. I backed away from the window too fast and hit my elbow on the edge of the bed frame, biting down a yelp. I didn't wake anyone, or maybe I couldn't. I went to shake Jenna's shoulder. Cold. Not dead, not hurt, just cold. Like her skin had no warmth at all. I whispered her name, louder each time. Nothing. Then I noticed something that nearly made me scream. Her eyes were open.
Liam was standing there, facing a long, cracked mirror propped against the far wall, the only one I'd seen in the entire village. His reflection wasn't moving, not like a trick of light or timing. His body shifted, adjusted slightly, but the reflection held still, watching him. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I turned and ran into the trees, down the trail we'd come from, branches slapping my arms, breath tearing through my throat. The trail seemed longer now, or wrong somehow. The landmarks weren't in the right order. I don't know how long I ran, but eventually I collapsed near the ridge where we'd first seen the village. When I looked back, there was nothing there. No village, no rooftops, just endless trees. I still don't know what happened to the others. I still don't know if what I saw was real, or if something broke in me that night. But sometimes, when I'm alone, I still feel those unblinking eyes watching. And the worst part is, I'm starting to forget their faces. Except for the children. They all looked exactly the same. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 17. I've always had this thing with textures, the way moss clings wet to bark, the crunch of dead leaves underfoot, the buzz of distant cicadas that never really stops. So when my friends talked me into a week-long jungle hike in Costa Rica, I agreed, but not without packing extra batteries for my camera and a journal I never actually write in. The air there was heavy, like it pressed on your skin from all directions at once. Everything was a little too green, a little too alive. On the third day, around noon, I stopped on the trail to photograph the canopy. Just a wide-angle shot. Sky, branches, layers of light. Nothing unusual. But when I looked back at the preview on my screen, I noticed a shape. Not a bird, not a monkey. Higher than anything should have been climbing. It looked like a figure, tall, narrow, motionless, nestled between the branches. And it didn't belong. I zoomed in. It wasn't moving. But I swear, it was looking at me. I didn't say anything to the others. What was I supposed to say? Hey, there's a tall tree man following us? I told myself it was a trick of the light, maybe some twisted branch that just looked like a person when viewed from a certain angle. But the feeling stuck. The air seemed even heavier after that, like the canopy had lowered somehow, pressing down on my chest. I kept glancing back at the tree as we walked, expecting to see it, him, again. I didn't. Not with my eyes anyway. But every time I took another picture, there it was. A long-limbed shape, distant but too defined. No matter where I pointed the lens, at a waterfall, the path ahead, even the faces of my friends, that figure appeared somewhere in the frame. Always high up, always still, always watching. I started deleting the photos as soon as I took them. It didn't help. In the next one, it would just show up again. Closer, maybe, or clearer. I stopped taking pictures after that. That night in the tent, I couldn't sleep. Every crack of a branch outside made my pulse spike. I kept thinking about the last photo I took, the one I didn't delete. I tried to snap a picture of the firelight, just something to capture the moment. But when I checked it, the figure wasn't up in the trees this time. It was standing behind Sam. No face, just long limbs, too straight. It looked flat, like it wasn't really in the space, just stamped onto the image, like some kind of error. Except it didn't feel like an error. It felt like a warning. I didn't show Sam. I didn't show anyone.
I just lay there, listening to the rainforest breathe, and wondered how close it had to be to show up that clearly. I remember holding my breath at one point, just trying to hear beyond the usual hum of the night. I thought I heard something moving, not walking, but shifting, like bark creaking under weight, like something tall swaying slightly above us. I told myself I was being paranoid. That's what I do, right? Spiral, see patterns, invent meanings. But still, I didn't sleep. The next morning, we hiked out early. I hadn't touched my camera again, but Sam asked if I'd gotten any good shots so far. I lied and said I'd accidentally formatted the card, that none of the photos saved. He laughed and called me cursed, like it was a joke. I think I laughed too, but my throat was dry. We took a detour that day, deeper into the...
My skin prickled. I looked up, just once, and saw him again. Not through a lens this time. No digital glitch, no camera tricks. Just there. Perched impossibly high, arms too long, body folded the wrong way to be human. And he moved. Not a lot, just a shift of the head, like he was acknowledging me. I froze. Every instinct screamed to run, but my legs wouldn't move. The air in the clearing was colder than it should have been, thick with this sweet, rotting smell, like overripe fruit left out too long. I stared up at the figure, and it didn't blink, didn't breathe, just stayed perfectly still, like it wanted me to keep looking. When I finally stepped back, the ground felt softer, spongy. I looked down and saw the forest floor was covered in fallen feathers. Not leaves, feathers. Dozens of them, black and glossy. None of the others noticed. When I rejoined the group, I didn't say a word. But from that moment, I kept feeling it. A presence just behind me, just outside my vision. The photos may have stopped, but the feeling didn't. That night, I woke up to find Sam sitting up in the tent, staring at the mesh door. His face was pale, damp with sweat. I asked what was wrong, and he said, barely above a whisper, there was someone in the trees, watching us. I didn't ask what he saw. I already knew. We left the jungle the next morning without speaking much. No one mentioned the clearing. No one asked why Sam barely looked up the entire hike back. Once we got to the lodge, I charged my camera out of morbid curiosity. There were no photos, not a single file. The memory card was completely blank, but that made no sense. I hadn't formatted it, not really. And when I checked the internal storage, I found one image. Just one. It wasn't any of the ones I remembered taking. It was a photo of our tent from the outside, taken at night. We were all asleep inside. I deleted it immediately, then threw the camera at the airport. But it doesn't matter. I still feel him sometimes. That pressure, that silence before the birds stop. Sometimes I catch myself staring at tall buildings or clusters of trees, heart pounding for no reason. And once, in my apartment window, I swear I saw something move behind me in the reflection, something too tall. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 18. I know I probably deserved it. The old guy warned me, flat out told me not to whistle in the jungle. But he said it in that cryptic, spooky tour guide tone, like he wanted to scare the foreigners. I was bored, sweaty, and surrounded by trees that all looked the same. So yeah, I whistled. I whistled the damn Colonel Bogey March, just to be a dick about it, a tune I thought would echo nicely. I didn't expect anything to whistle back. But later that night, when we set up camp near the tree line, I started to hear it. At first, it was faint, just a few notes, carried by the wind, almost lost in the hum of insects. But then it came again, clearer, the exact same melody, my melody. Slower, deliberate, offbeat,
like someone learning it in real time, or taunting me with it. We laughed about it at first. The others thought it was a bird. I said maybe the jungle just had a good ear. But by midnight, no one was laughing anymore. I tried to brush it off, even cracked a joke about the jungle having Spotify. But deep down, something about the way it mimicked me, not just the notes, but the pauses between them, felt wrong. It wasn't random. It wasn't nature. It was like someone out there had been listening the whole time, and now they were playing it back, slower, like they wanted me to really hear it, like they wanted me to know they heard me. By 2 a.m., the whistling hadn't stopped. It didn't get closer, it didn't fade. It just circled us, always out in the dark, never in the same spot twice. One of the guys, Mateo, got freaked and started yelling into the trees, thinking it was locals messing with us. But the whistling didn't respond, didn't flinch, just kept going, note by note, like some kind of sick lullaby. That was the moment I realized no one had actually seen where the sound was coming from. I couldn't sleep, not with that sound weaving through the dark like it owned the night.
The rest of us didn't say anything, but we all felt it. That pressure, like the air was too heavy to breathe normally, like the jungle was leaning in just a little too close. That's when I noticed the bugs had stopped. No buzzing, no chirping, nothing. Just the whistle, my whistle, like a looped recording, except every few minutes a note changed. I finally snapped around 3:30 a.m., grabbed my flashlight and stomped into the trees, yelling into the dark like some idiot trying to scare off a bear. I shouted that I wasn't afraid, that if someone was messing with us, they'd better come out and say it to my face. I whistled again, just to prove I wasn't rattled. That was the last time I made that sound, because this time the jungle answered, instantly. Same tune, same pitch, no delay. It was close, too close. I froze. Every hair on my arm stood up like static. The light from my flashlight caught nothing but leaves and trunks, but the sound, it was right behind me. I swear I felt breath on the back of my neck, but when I spun around, there was nothing there, just trees. Trees and that unbearable, perfect silence between the notes. I didn't run, not yet. I backed away slowly, like something in me knew that running would trigger something worse, something final. I made it back to camp without realizing I was crying. Mateo was gone. His hammock was still swaying, but he wasn't in it. No footprints, no noise, just that endless whistling, weaving between the trees like it was looking for someone else to mimic. The others were frozen, wide-eyed, clutching whatever they could as weapons. No one said anything. No one moved. It felt like if we acknowledged it, whatever was out there would know who was next. Right before dawn, the whistling stopped. Not faded, stopped. Like someone had pressed pause on reality itself. We waited in that breathless silence until the sun broke through the canopy. I couldn't explain it, but the light felt wrong, like it wasn't supposed to be there yet. We packed in record time and got the hell out. Didn't even speak until we hit the road. The local guide, the one who'd warned me, just shook his head when he saw our faces. "You whistled," he said. Not a question, just fact. Like that was all the explanation we needed, or would ever get. We filed reports, told the ranger station Mateo wandered off during the night, that maybe he got lost. But we all knew that was bullshit. People don't just vanish like that, not without a sound, not with their hammock still rocking. I haven't spoken to the others since we got back. I think we're all trying to forget, to convince ourselves it was exhaustion, dehydration, maybe some weird echo in the trees. But I know what I heard. It wasn't an echo. It was something else, something that learned. Now, I can't stand silence.
I sleep with music playing, always something random, something I never hum or sing. Because ever since that night, sometimes, when everything's quiet, I hear it again. Just a few slow, deliberate notes. The same broken tune. My tune. If anyone's ever been in the jungle and heard something whistle back at them, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one. I need to know it doesn't follow you home. Story 19. I don't usually waste time on ghost stories, especially not the kind that start with, "I swear this really happened." But I'm not here to convince you of anything. I just need to write this down. Something about that house, the one on stilts in the middle of the floodplain, it won't leave my head. Every time I close my eyes, I see that window. I see the curtains. I see the hand. This happened about a week ago. I'd taken my kayak out to explore after the river jumped its banks. A once-in-a-decade flood, they said. Roads were underwater, fields had turned into lakes, and most folks had evacuated. I was the idiot who thought, why not make the best of it? I packed a dry bag, grabbed my GoPro, and paddled out like I was on some kind of post-apocalyptic vacation. First mistake. The first time I saw the house, it was just a silhouette through the trees, raised high on old wooden stilts, like a relic from another time. The water had risen almost to the floorboards, but it still stood dry, untouched. What caught my eye were the curtains, pale, floral, swaying slightly in the open window. I remember thinking how odd it was that someone left them like that.
Maybe it had been that way the whole time, and I just hadn't noticed. The second pass wasn't intentional. I'd gone farther down the waterway, but some submerged debris blocked the path ahead. Had to double back. As I neared the house again, I felt it before I saw it, that stupid tingle on the back of my neck, like someone breathing too close. I turned, and sure enough, the curtain was different. Pulled halfway aside now, like a stage waiting for someone to step out. Still no movement, still no sound, but I started paddling a little faster. I told myself it was nothing. Wind, water currents, maybe even my imagination. I mean, I've seen horror movies. This is the part where the dumbass goes inside, right? Well, not me. I didn't even dock. Just passed by a little wider this time, eyes locked on that window like it owed me answers. And then came the third pass, the one I wish I could forget. The curtain was wide open, and someone was there. Not just standing, waving. It wasn't a frantic wave either. It was slow, deliberate, like they knew I'd been watching the whole time and were finally acknowledging me. I couldn't see their face, just a silhouette, backlit by the dim gray of the overcast sky behind them. No detail, no motion besides that hand, rising and falling in a rhythm that felt off, too slow, too mechanical. I yelled out, half to prove I wasn't scared. "Hey, you okay in there?" No response, just the wave. Now here's the part that still makes my stomach drop. I blinked, just once, and when I opened my eyes, nothing. The window was empty. The curtain hung still, like it had never moved. No silhouette, no hand, just a perfectly quiet house staring back at me like a dare. I wanted to believe I'd imagined it. Hell, I tried to. But then I noticed something I hadn't before. A second window on the side, closed when I arrived, open now. I didn't hang around to investigate. I turned the kayak around so fast I nearly tipped it. Every instinct was screaming to get the hell out of there, but I couldn't stop glancing over my shoulder. Each time I did, something had changed. A curtain drawn here, a shutter loosened there. It was like the house was rearranging itself behind my back, like it knew I was watching and didn't want to be caught. And that damn feeling, like something was keeping pace with me, just out of sight, under the water or inside the trees. I made it back to the launch point in record time, threw the kayak into the bed of my truck without even strapping it down.
I didn't look back. Not until I was halfway down the dirt road, engine rattling, tires slipping in the mud. Then I gave in. One last glance in the rear view. The stilt house was barely visible through the trees, but I swear to you, I swear, the figure was outside now, standing on the landing, not waving, just still. I've checked satellite maps, old property records, even asked around in the nearest town. People just shake their heads or change the subject. One guy told me, ain't nobody lived out there since the fire. But there was no sign of fire damage. No char, no blackened wood, just silence and those curtains that move when they shouldn't. I thought about going back with friends, cameras, the whole ghost hunting setup. But I haven't, because I know what I saw. And more than that, I know it saw me too. I haven't slept through a night since. Sometimes I wake up and swear I hear water lapping outside my window. Sometimes I dream of that slow, deliberate wave. But the worst is the feeling that something's waiting, not where it was, but here, watching me. The same way I watched it. If anyone else has paddled that way and seen the house, if anyone's ever felt something watching them from a window that shouldn't be open, please tell me. I need to know I'm not the only one. Story 20. I know how this sounds. Another creepy camping story told by someone who swears it's true. Hell, I wouldn't believe me either, except I've seen something like this before. I buried it, moved on, kept my head down for years. But when Eric looked me dead in the eye last weekend and asked me what his own name was, something in me cracked. It was like watching a mirror splinter from the inside out. We weren't drunk, we weren't high, and we weren't supposed to be that deep in the forest. It started as a joke, like most bad ideas do. We'd heard about the place from a gas station attendant just outside Eugene, Oregon. Stay clear of the woods past mile marker 12, he said, tapping the counter twice like it was some kind of warning bell. That forest doesn't like to be remembered.
We'd been friends since college and had done a few hikes together, but nothing this remote. The trail we followed was barely marked, and after the first hour, cell service dropped completely. We joked about it, how horror movies always start this way. But the deeper we went, the quieter everything became. Not peaceful quiet, hollow quiet. Like the air was pressing inward, thick and soundless. Even the birds seemed to avoid that part of the forest. We set up camp just before dusk, maybe a mile past mile marker 12. The forest there looked wrong. Not overtly, nothing you'd notice unless you were paying attention. The trees were too evenly spaced, like they'd been planted with purpose, and their trunks had these faint, almost perfect spiral grooves going up about 6 feet before vanishing. Donnie said it looked kinda beautiful. Eric didn't say much at all. He kept looking around like he'd forgotten something. When I asked if he was okay, he blinked like I'd woken him up from a dream and just muttered, yeah, I'm fine. That night, the fire felt too bright. I know that doesn't make sense, but it's the only way I can describe it. The flames lit up the clearing like a spotlight on a stage, and everything outside that circle was pitch black. No shadows, no moonlight filtering through the trees, just a solid wall of darkness. We stayed up telling stories and drinking, but the laughter felt forced. At one point, I swear I heard footsteps just beyond the tree line. Not twigs snapping or rustling leaves, footsteps, measured, pacing. I froze mid-sentence, but when I asked if anyone else had heard it, Jesse just shrugged. Probably a deer. When we finally turned in, I zipped myself into the tent and lay there for what felt like hours. That strange silence had returned, but worse now. So complete, it made my own breathing feel intrusive. Then, just as I was starting to drift off, I heard someone whisper my name from outside the tent. Quiet, urgent. Tom. I sat up so fast I smacked my head on the nylon ceiling. It was Eric's voice, but when I unzipped the flap and looked out, there was no one there. Just the fire, still burning low, and the forest. watching. By morning, Eric was gone. His sleeping bag lay open and empty, his boots still beside it. No note, no sound of someone leaving, no rustled footprints in the pine needles. We searched in every direction, shouting his name until our voices cracked. Jesse wanted to head back and call for help, but Mariah insisted we keep looking just a bit longer. We found him maybe an hour later, sitting cross-legged by the same spiral-grooved tree Donnie had pointed out the night before. He looked up at us slowly, like it took effort to remember how faces worked. "What's my name?" he asked. Not like a joke, dead serious. His eyes were glassy, unfocused. I laughed at first, thought he was messing with us. But he didn't laugh, he didn't blink, just stared. I felt something sink in my gut, like gravity had doubled. "Eric," I said. "Eric, man, it's us. You okay?" He tilted his head like the name didn't register. Then he whispered, "That doesn't sound right." He didn't recognize me. He didn't recognize any of us. We tried to walk him back to camp, but Eric kept stopping, looking around like he was seeing the world for the first time. Every few minutes he'd touch the trees, run his fingers along the bark like it held some answer. "It's too quiet," he mumbled once, "like the space between thoughts." Donnie tried to joke with him, lighten the mood, but he flinched when she touched his shoulder. He pulled away fast, stumbling into the underbrush and whispering something none of us could make out. When we caught up, he was staring at his own hands, shaking. Back at camp, things got worse. Eric wouldn't eat, he wouldn't sit. He kept pacing around the fire pit, mumbling nonsense, fragments of sentences, strange numbers, names none of us recognized. I caught him whispering into his cupped hands, like he was holding something fragile and invisible. At one point, he looked right at me and said, "We're not supposed to be remembered." I didn't know what that meant until I saw the look on Jesse's face. It was the same fear I'd seen once before, years ago, in someone who had also come back from the woods, changed. We broke camp within the hour. No one said it aloud, but we all knew we had to get out. The path back was harder to find than it should have been. Trees looked different. Landmarks we'd passed the day before were missing or rearranged. At one point, Mariah stopped and turned in a slow circle, pale as a sheet. "I think we're walking in a loop." We argued, shouted, blamed the map, the compass, each other. Eric walked behind us, silent, arms wrapped around himself like he was cold. When we flagged down a car and got help, he didn't speak a word to the paramedics. At the hospital, they ran every test you can imagine. Physically, he was fine, but he didn't know his name, didn't recognize us in the photos we showed him. The doctors called it dissociative amnesia brought on by trauma. But that doesn't explain why he no longer reacts to his own reflection, or why 3 days later, Jesse forgot my name. I've been writing everything down, every detail I can remember, not just about the trip, but from before it too. I check my ID every morning now. I keep photos in my pocket. I ask people to say my name out loud just to be sure I still exist the way I think I do. Because the thing is, I don't think we were supposed to leave that forest. I think something let us go. And ever since, there's been this faint pressure in my head, like a hand resting just behind my eyes, waiting, testing. Last night, I woke up and found my phone on the floor, still recording a voice memo I don't remember starting. It was just my voice, whispering the same thing over and over. "Don't let them take your name." I haven't seen Eric since he was transferred. Jessie won't answer my calls. And Danny? She texted me this morning asking who I was. If anyone's ever been through something like this, please say something. I need to know I'm not the only one.